Please welcome to the stage.
Well, it's Thursday afternoon and everybody's gone, except for the ones that are really serious here. So, what we want to do is, I've had the opportunity to be working on the Riot Metro. First of all, is there anybody here from Riot? Yes? I got to avoid that group. Because we've torn up Riot, and I'll be very frank with you. We've torn it up, and we've thrown a new metro, a mass transportation system, into a city that's never had one before. If you look at this slide here, there's a whole sequence of lines drawn through it. We have constructed in the city now about, as you can see there, 176 kilometers of metro is going in the city. There are 6 distinct lines, and there's a whole new system of bus transportation that'll be kind of like the spider network that brings everything into these stations that are being constructed in the city. There's 85 stations and roughly 190 some odd trains that will be operating in the city. About a third of it is also underground. So the construction mess and the things that's been done to the city has been astronomical in terms of traffic diversions, detours, business disruptions, and everything, all in the effort to develop and throw in a mass transit system. Now, 10 years ago, when I came to Riyadh, I discovered there haven't been any major highway upgrades in Riyadh for about 20 years, except for maybe a couple of ring roads. And so a mass transit system started out as a comprehensive transportation study. And of course, during that transportation study, they analyzed the growth over the next 30 years and tried to figure out where to put the stations in this city. And so that's led us to these transportation studies, and consequently, we were tasked with constructing 6 lines throughout the city and those various stations. Now, we just didn't construct regular stations. Some of these stations turned out to be iconic stations. And when I say iconic stations, I mean a regular metro station might cost $100 million. An iconic station is going to be costing somewhere between $600 and $700 million. So there's quite a contrast in some of these iconic stations, like when you have them around the financial district or in the downtown area. So the comprehension of designing and building a metro from scratch, what I want to share with you in just a few minutes that I have with you is some of the issues we've had associated with this, as well as some of the causes of delay that was previously talked about, but I want to add a few more that probably you haven't even considered here. So the first thing that we had to do was realize is that when the client, which was the Riyadh Development Authority, which was changed to the Riyadh Development Authority, which is now called the Royal Commission of Riyadh City, is changes in our client. And as we know, the evolution of government hierarchy in the kingdom has been quite dramatic in the last couple of years. So stakeholder management has been a significant thing. Causes of delays and changes in construction designs and practices and whatever. But in order to do this, the client decided he was going to let this out to 3 different consortiums. Now, we had to form consortiums because no one company could do this project. So we brought together a civil works organization, which one of them consisted of Cellini, Imbrogilio, Nesma, and Larson and Toubro to do the civil works, which was about 80% of this. And then we partnered up with Ansaldo, which was doing our signaling, our automatic train controls, and everything like that associated with the operations of trains. And then we brought in another company like Bombardier. But the interesting thing about all these trains running in the city there is there are 3 different manufacturers of trains. Between these 3 consortiums, they didn't fabricate from the same train. Why? Because they didn't want to take the risk of having one train manufacturer fail. So they figured if they gave it out to the 3 major train manufacturers in the world, Bombardier, Alstom, and Siemens, that they would be able to make sure they had a reliable in terms of completing the project. Now, this project was a design build. So in terms of these other organizations, you have to bring in a major design firm that can do the design for the stations and things like that. Okay? So, what's one of the biggest problems we see? Bringing all these companies together and getting them to agree and work together, because not only are they different organizations, but they come from different countries. So they have different standards. Like one of the consortium I belong to is A&M there. Most of those people are Italians, which, you know, the Italians are not predominant here in the kingdom, except they're now immensely involved with this consortium. If you take FAST down below there, which I'm not involved with, but we interface with occasionally, they have Koreans in it. And then you have Baxman, which is Bechtel, and they're the major one, and Albemarle, that's a combination of U.S. companies and whatnot. So, as well as I'm from Worley Parsons, or Worley, we're from Australia, although I'm American, so you know, that's another story. So, interfacing with different people, different organizations, as well as the quantity of people that we have to bring in here. Most of these organizations are running between, well, we have 14,000 people working right now. Bax has around 3, which is the longest east-west line in the city. That's a 42-kilometer line, which has 22 stations. So immediately you can take and do a word breakdown structure and say, well, that's easier. Just divide the 22 stations up, and those are word breakdown structure elements. And that's true. We did it that way. But then you have to also throw in other things like tunneling, landscaping, viaduct work, track work, purchasing trains, and all the other things associated with what was necessary to do this project. So we had to consider all that. Not only that, but we had the 7 companies, and we had to divide out what work scope each of those 7 companies was going to do. And you mainly pick the companies that are the experts in those areas. Secondly, you had to schedule it. We have over 50,000 activities in our schedule right now. And that's a massive problem, and many times we are crashing P6 because I think we've hit the limit of Primavera's scheduling capabilities on a project that big. We probably should have gone to another software package like Artemis instead of pushing P6 to its limits. So there's a lot of things like that I want to kind of talk to you about. And of course the execution and safety and visas and everything like that necessary to ramp this project up. So let's go on a little bit further. This is the east-west line through Riyadh right now. This east-west line, as I mentioned, is the longest line. It goes through right down from the Mecca Road all the way through the downtown area out to the eastern side of the city. It encompasses 22 stations. We have 2 junction stations where we have trains from the other consortiums joining us, but they don't join and have like on the same track. They're at different levels as they come into the station. So, let's talk about some of the construction things that you've got to be aware of. Now, Mr. Hatani was talking about delays in the projects. Let me throw out a couple of things that I bet you've never considered on a project. We have had massive problems with probably 4 areas. One was land acquisition. Believe it or not, when we started the project, all the land had not been acquired by ADA. In fact, as of today, let me go back on the schedule here. This project started in October of 2013. And believe it or not, I've been on this project for all but 3 months of it so far. So, land acquisition has been one of our biggest problems. Only from the standpoint that we right now that we don't have any exits for the station given to us yet because the stations are a little bit bigger. One of the other things that's one of our biggest challenges has been traffic detours. If you take a look at just this one picture of the viaducts, we have 23 kilometers of viaduct that we installed, roughly 950 piers. Every one of those piers, it seems like, ran into utilities. And what do you have to do? You have to move those utilities. Now, that's the easy part. When I have an underground station, I have to excavate out, and I'll give you one of our stations was 40 meters deep. So we had to go down 40 meters on one of our stations, and of course, once you get below about 10 meters, you're beyond all the local utilities that are there. So out of 22 stations, 900 piers, and track work, diversion of utilities was a huge challenge, especially when we run into such things like a 1,000 mil water pipe for the city of Riot. You know, we just can't shut down potable water on a major pipeline like that very easily. Or a 132 kV power line that SEC doesn't want to give you an outage because it's summertime. And of course, what's the problem in the summertime? You have major air conditioning loads. So these are the things that, at the beginning of the project, I'm going to be frank with you, we didn't consider those delays. We thought we could get utility diversions very quickly. We thought we could get outages very quickly to put in piers and stations and everything like that we had to do. So those were things that, if I did this project again, I would put extra contingency in for utility delays. Now, while I'm picking on the utility companies, I hope I don't have Saudi Electricity Company with me, because our metro is electric, and we had 4 substations. Those 4 substations got power from Saudi Electricity Company. Well, I see a man in the front row here. He's chuckling because he must have worked with SEC before, because getting power, as promised, from the Saudi Electricity Company was about a year to 18 months delayed. Yeah, he says, yeah, I've seen this before. And unfortunately, I had people in the beginning of the project, because I worked on another project that was the same problem, getting the actual power because Saudi Electricity Company had to build new substations themselves to provide the necessary power that we need. And it just wasn't our line. There were 5 other lines. They're having to construct new stations throughout the city to provide these major electrical load changes within the city limits. So, excuse me, go ahead. Ooh, I can't remember. I'm guessing about 10 megawatts. But I can't, don't quote me. Okay? I was going to look that up. And you know what? I have an electrical engineering degree as well. I should have known that. Right now I'm worried about train signaling and everything like that. So, let me continue here. All right. So, along with that, we are now approximately 90% complete. We might finish in about another year and a half. And I use the word might because we still have some uncertainties out there. Now, let me throw a curve at you that you probably never dreamed of would happen to you. And we're constructing, and you can see from some of these pictures that I'm going to show you, we're progressing pretty well. And our scheduled completion is, I'll just say, early 2021. Okay? That's our scheduled completion. I'm not supposed to tell you that. So you're not supposed to know that. So. You didn't know that. But now I want to tell you something. We're going along really great to about a month and a half, 2 months ago, and they say, by the way, we want to change your work scope. You've heard that before, right? Well, we want to change your work scope because, guess what? We have a G20 summit. Can you do a soft opening and have the metro open by the G20 summit? Now, by soft opening, that means you don't have to have all 22 stations finished, but we'd like to have some major ones, and your iconic station, I'll show you a picture of our king wants to come in and dedicate that station. Well, what do you think that does to this project scope? I've been working with our planners and our schedulers and our construction managers for about 3 weeks now, intensely trying to come up with a schedule and identify which of our stations will be ready for the G20 opening. So, metro systems also are somewhat new in Saudi Arabia, aren't they? Like, this is the first one, isn't it? We have train systems like the Harriman high-speed train, and we've got the train between Riyadh and Dammam and so forth. But the Public Transportation Authority, or the Transportation General Authority, which is now renamed, or used to be Saudi Railway Commission, again, changes in requirements have come. It used to be Saudi Railway Commission, then it was Transportation. No. Anyway, it's now TGA. Okay? They've changed. Not only that, but they've not had experience of giving the safety certificates for a metro system before. They've done airports, they've done things like that before, but they haven't done a metro system. So they've recruited a lot of people who have come in from British Railways and places like that that have been experienced. So we're working with them because in order to make a system ready for public transportation, it has to meet the safety criteria of this governing agency. And their requirements have been recently formed. Not only that, but we have to get approval by civil defense to make this, to demonstrate that it's safe for public access from the fire and emergency evacuation perspective. So these are the things that I also want to emphasize is how important it is, things that have changed. Now, you know, the construction itself has been fairly straightforward from the standpoint it's basically a concrete box with some fancy steel and aluminum GRC around it, GRP. So the civil construction hasn't been bad. The interface with the signaling and things like that, the companies we brought together like Bombardier and Saldo, they've done this before, so they know how to do it. But now we've got to get all of our safety cases, and we had to design according to NFPA 130, which is for metro systems, and demonstrate that all this is going to meet the criteria of the independent safety assessor that's got to be done. So even though it's been a great civil engineering construction project, you also have the technical side of this that has plowed new ground here in Saudi because nobody's brought a metro online before, and the safety cases and all those kind of things have been new to understand. Like, if I go back to one of these slides, you might have seen there. Whoops, there. All right, one more time. This right here is an emergency exit. You cannot have any longer than about 760 meters because you have to be able to evacuate people if a train fails or gets on fire. And that's one of the other significant problems with the soft opening. If the train's on fire, do I stop it at a station that's not completed in construction? Because then I have to evacuate people. And how do I get people off of a train through a construction zone? So, as was politely mentioned, changes in work scope in construction, this has been a huge impact to us right now. All right? Well, here's the metro. Let me just talk a little bit about it. We have 9 elevated stations. They are quite large in comparison to probably stations you've been on in Europe. So, doing good. Am I supposed to end now? We're going. Oh, I thought you were telling me to end. Okay. This is the Operations Control Center. So you have to put in an Operations Control Center. There are 5 Operations Control Centers throughout the city. We do the fundamental controls of our line through the one center here, but we do feed information into the main central one in Riyadh. So all the trains are dispatched and monitored with all the computer monitors, and if a train fails or it has to be rescued or whatever, you know all that there, okay? So those are the kind of things, as well as you have a whole maintenance facility for trains, and you know what you're doing there, okay? So, Operations Control Center, a couple of your iconic stations. This is the one iconic station. It's called our Western Station. That station looks more like an airline terminal to me, because it's so large. And you can see the magnitude of it compared to the cars there. And then, of course, we have, this is the deep underground station, which is our iconic station, which they want ready for the G20 opening. I don't think it's going to make it in 6 months. That station is where we dug down 40 meters to put in that whole area, because we've got 2 lines coming in there. We've got our line and then we've got the back's line. And one line comes in at the minus 37 meters, the other line comes in at the minus 27 meters. So, massive amount of excavation and whatnot to do this. Now, I'm going to show you a quick little video, but I'm only going to show you part of it. So, go ahead and start it. This is just a quick video so you can kind of see the perspective. Oh, turn the sound down. I don't want sound. Then I can't talk. Okay, good. All right. So stop right there. So that iconic station that I told you about, one of the problems we were having here, that hole, if I could use that term, is a 40 meter by 60 meter stainless steel bowl. That's a little bigger than your cereal bowl, I'm sure. Okay? The problem we're having with that is, where do you find people in Saudi Arabia to weld stainless steel? It's not a common welder, and it's very technical to weld stainless steel. Not only that, but with that massive amount of metal, it's going to have some expansion and contraction because of the sun on one side of it and the other side of it, as well as polishing that so it looks like a mirror. And of course, they want it to be mirror perfect. But the sheets are like 4 by 8 meter sheets that are being welded together. They're being pre-rolled, and it's a massive problem to weld it and to fabricate. We still haven't got the fabrication done, and this is what's going to probably be the reason that's not going to open in time, is because of that hole right there. All right, start the video again, please. Okay. All right, so that's there. Now, this is the other iconic. Stop. Whoops, you went too far. Stop. Okay. He skipped the other iconic station, the one that looks like the airline terminal, but I'll just leave it at that. We'll skip that. Now, the other thing that we've done that is new technology, this is what's called a tunnel boring machine. At one time, there were 7 of those tunnel boring machines putting tunnels under the city of Riyadh. Now, you can imagine a lot of people were quite nervous about that, for the reason that says, what if things collapse? But the beauty about this tunnel boring machine that is now done today is this machine doesn't just bore the tunnels, but it puts up the concrete liners. The concrete liners are 7 segments that are fabricated, and we're able to put in and do that. Okay, start the video again. Oops. And I'll just finish up here quickly. Somebody's telling me my time. So, this is the iconic station. This is the other iconic station coming up now. That's the tunnel boring machine. And of course, we had to do, there it is coming through the deep station there. It's about 100 meters long. This is the West Depot, where all the maintenance is carried out on the trains. And there's some of the trains there that's in the West Depot. And then this is coming up to the Operations Control Center here. Right there. Okay? Stop. So this is the Operations Control Center. This is where the heart of the train is all monitored. All these trains are going to be driverless or automatically train controlled. So we of course have to do all the testing and the commissioning and everything on those systems to make sure everything operates correctly, as well as meets all the safety criteria. And with that, I'm going to call her good. Any quick questions? Yes? A microphone? Just yell. We're behind schedule, so. All right, you have a question?
Thank you very much, Mr. Bryant, for that presentation. It's really informative. You say you have 7 contractors working on the project, right?
Yeah, well, 7 consortium partners that came together, and then we subcontract out the construction work.
Right. How do you get all of them integrated in terms of standards, codes, they have all of them?
How do you what? I'm sorry?
How do you get them integrated in terms of different standards, they have different codes, building codes, all these details?
Well,
this is the first question.
Fortunately, the client gave us a very detailed technical proposal that listed all the codes and the standards we had to follow into the design. So the designs are pretty common for constructing metros. For instance, the Life Safety Code in NFPA 130, not 101, which you might be familiar with. NFPA 130 is pretty much the design safety code for metro systems. Okay? So there's a lot of other British standards and American standards for metro systems that was the guidance for what we had to do on the project.
Okay. The second question, the progress now is 90%, right?
Unofficially, approximately.
Okay. I heard you say you still need 1.5 years.
Yes.
For 10%.
Yes.
That's true. Very, very much.
Part of the reasons is the testing and verification of the train operations. That's construction percentage, but we have to do things like system demonstration testing. We have to do trial runs. We have to run these trains for 1 million hours. Okay? So it's all that testing and safety verification that has to be done there. And not only that, but we have to coordinate it with the operator, because we are not going to be the operator. There's been another contract awarded for the operator, that operator then has to take and be qualified by the TGA to also operate. So that's called a trial run.
So I think it's not 10%. That means you're supposed to have 10 years or 15 years plan. You got my point?
The operator will be a 10-year contract.
Because you're bidding in 7 years now, right?
Well, yes.
Okay, 7 years for 90%, and you still have 1.5 years for 10%. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, it doesn't make any sense because this project's front-loaded. We got to talk about cost estimating.
Okay.
The cost of concrete and steel and excavation in the beginning of the project was way more than the testing and commissioning is. When you're running a train up and down a track, it's not very expensive, as it was when we were in the early stages of the project. So it's front-end loading, you build quantities.
Good luck.
Well, that's what everybody says, yeah. Okay, that's it.
Sorry.
All right, oh, sorry.
On this,
Go ahead.
or 90%, and I think 1.5 years is very conservative. Or 10% on this one. From my experience in the project, barely in the end of the day, we are achieving 0.5% of the month. 10% with the volume of the project, with the complication that we are facing, the change in scope, I don't think that 1 year and a half. This is from my experience.
You're probably right, but that's our official position right now, okay? All right, thank you. Appreciate everybody's attention. Yes.
Hello, one quick one. How many ICPs do you have for the project? Do you have how many ICPs, independent contractors person? Do you have one for Bombardier, one for Excelsior?
I'm sorry, I can't, the microphone, I can't quite hear what you're saying. How many what?
You're applying for the TGA certificate, right?
Yes, the TGA.
Are you doing it initially for Bombardier and Excelsior, and then there's a global ICP? How that work with the TGA? Have to.
We have what they call an independent safety assessor and an independent competent person, which is required by the procedures in the safety requirements, that we demonstrate our design and our testing and commissioning to them. Then they prepare what's called a safety case and submit that to the TGA for their approval.
My question is, how many ICPs do you have?
How many ICPs?
Are you doing it per contractor, like Bombardier, they have to produce their ICPs?
We are using TUV Reinhold as our ISA and our ICP.
That's the global ICP.
Yeah, that's just one. But then the employer has their ISA too, which is, I just went brain dead. Anyway, the employer has an EISA, an employer's ISA as well.
Good luck.
You guys are totally pretty good. Thank you, folks.